secondary school chemistry teacher on career break, and I'm now a stay-at-home mum and front row, but I'm living in Bruen, County Galway. And 2 years ago, my eldest son was entering our local Catholic primary school, and very soon I became a concerned parent when it comes to RSE. Is this working? No problem. So my child's junior infants lesson in the local Catholic primary school, the junior infants lesson on a paedophile childminder, was the start of a Pandora's box being open. Last October, Senator Ronan Mullen put me in touch with another lady living in Bruen who was also concerned about RSE in her girls' secondary school, and we soon became partners in crime. We began to help each other delve into the quagmire of literature, sponsors, researchers. We now speak at conferences, write template letters, we do radio interviews and debates. We have a mailing list and we write for Catholic newspapers. What I'm about to talk about is not for sensitive ears or eyes. I have to apologise for the unpalatable content and the subject of what I'm to speak about. I don't particularly want to speak about it, but I think it's important that people know. Sorry. I ask you to pray for protection for me and others who are exposing this and sometimes view vulgar and disturbing material. So, what is proposed to happen with RSE in our schools? So, in April 2018, the then Minister for Education, Richard Bruen, asked the National Council for Curriculum Assessment, the NCCA, to review relationships and sexuality education in schools. So that's the NCCA, and we're talking about RSE classes. He wanted it to include consent, contraception, and LGBTQ+ matters, if it didn't already contain it, as well as the influence of the internet and social media on relationships. In November 2018, the NCCA released the research paper. You can just see here. If it's too small, I apologise, but I'll read out the important bits. So just let's take a quick look at some of the most interesting parts of that. Page 23 talks about the most advocated approach to sex education that the NCCA think is fit. It's called holistic sex education, but don't be fooled. It's not holistic in the true sense. It has as its primary focus, you might be able to read there if I increase the size of it. So, it has as its primary focus sexuality as a positive human potential and a source of satisfaction and pleasure. There's no mention of love in any of this, fidelity, marriage. Page 25 talks about how the HSE, holistic sex education, doesn't aim to change any behaviour but prepares for that behaviour. Now, as parents, we have to challenge bad behaviour all the time. Our job is not to prepare a child to get away with bad behaviour as best as is possible. We challenge bad behaviour and we try to correct it. So this is fundamentally against what a parent would do. Page 38 is probably the most offensive to parents. This research that they're using suggests that the parents' approach to, and you can see if I can see, falls short. The parents' approach to sex education is future and consequence oriented, which falls short of the holistic model advocated by the WHO 2010. So our instinct as parents to teach our children the consequences and the future that is chosen by particular paths and particular behaviours, it isn't actually good enough according to them or the WHO model, which we'll talk about later on. Page 43, the Catholic Church gets a special mention. It's not about all the great work in education that the Catholic Church, of course, has done over the years. On page 43, it identifies the Catholic Church as affecting the quality of sex education in schools on an international basis in a negative capacity. In February 2019, the NCCA closed an online monkey survey, a multiple choice questionnaire with limited and unsatisfactory answers which could be misconstrued easily. In fact, I have friends that refused to carry out that survey because of the only answers that were available to choose. They just refused to carry it out so that their answers would not be misconstrued. A draft report was released. You can see the cover of it here. That was in July 2019. And that claimed that the vast majority of parents, students, teachers and focus groups in Ireland who participated or who got special invitations. Did you get your invitation? I didn't get an invitation either. But the vast majority of parents, students, teachers and focus groups who participated want more than just biological sex education, and it concluded that school ethos does indeed influence the teaching of RSE. Interestingly, this draft report referenced the 2010 WHO document several times, so let's take a quick look at this. So this document is a standards for sexuality education in Europe. It's a framework for policymakers, educational and health authorities and specialists. So here we're talking about Feroga, we're talking about the Scouts and TUSA and all your youth services, and we're talking about mental health services like Jigsaw. This is what they want for your 0 to 4-year-old children. You're definitely not able to read that. So the information they want the 0 to 4-year-old children to be given is about enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, early childhood masturbation. This document doesn't get any better. Discovery of one's own body and genitals. For 6 to 9-year-olds, they want your 6 to 9-year-olds to be given information about sexual intercourse and to help children develop an understanding about acceptable sex. For 9 to 12-year-olds, your 9 to 12-year-olds, information about first sexual experience and about pleasure, and to make a conscious decision whether or not to have a sexual experience. Your 12 to 15-year-olds, they want them to be able to obtain the skills to access contraception. And your 15-year-olds, they're going to give them information on the right to abortion, which actually doesn't exist. There is no right to abortion. As I said, this is Feroga, Scouts, TUSA, Youth Services, Jigsaw, Mental Health Services, and anyone who's working with youth. This is their framework policy, this is their guidelines. On a recent radio debate I participated in, a lady on the panel, a youth worker from Donegal, told us that she doesn't know any parents who ever had a problem with their children being given this information in her youth services. I asked her, did the parents know what information was being given to those children, and she said yes, that all signed a consent form. Perhaps you've signed a consent form. Perhaps you've been told that all the information about the course is online and you can go and look it up because this is what the youth worker said. That is not consent. Consent must be with full knowledge. I reminded her that in the future she will be held personally responsible for the information that she has given to those children. What else is happening? In the background to all of this, we have the Provision of Objective Sex Education Bill 2019, proposed by Ruth Coffinger, Mick Barry and Paul Murphy. Do they represent you?
No.
No. This is supported by the National Women's Council of Ireland, Shout Out, Daughter for Choice, Rape Crisis Network, UCD, Students' Union, Irish Family Planning Association, Belong To, UACT Europe, Irish Second Level Students' Union and the Atheist Ireland. Maybe they represent you? No. This bill is rather brief, but with a few small changes to our comprehensive and widely respected Education Act of 1998, it proposes to change the face of education, eradicate ethos and interfere with the rights of parents as primary educators to choose a school according to its ethos. In summary, schools, boards of management and the Minister of Education can uphold the ethos of the school except when it comes to RSE classes. And the second point is that the Minister for Education, when prescribing a curriculum for RSE, must include consent to sexual activity, different types of sexuality and gender, methods of contraception and termination of pregnancy. For the first time, we have legislation proposed which dictates curriculum content and goes further in telling us how that content must be delivered. It must be factual, age-appropriate, and not gender-normative. Factual? Oh, will all the facts be included, like the facts of abortion, that a life is always ended? Perhaps the statistics of post-abortion regret or suicide will be included. Objective and age-appropriate? Who decides what is objective and age-appropriate? And why do they get to choose? And if it isn't gender-normative, then it doesn't refer to the two sexes, then it doesn't conform to the objective norms of gender in Ireland, and it ignores our shared values and our culture. This bill has had very little opposition. It's at the third stage of the Dáil, and as such has had a committee set up. It's a joint committee on education and skills. Sorry, this doesn't get any better. They published a report in January of this year calling for changes, indeed for these changes to be made to the Education Act so that ethos would no longer be a barrier. So let's have a look at this just briefly. Here are points 8, 10, 11 and 12 of their recommendations. Now it's going to be quite hard to read. I'll try and scroll down through it for you. 8 refers to LGBTQI plus matters, gender identity, specific sexual health issues when it comes to LGBTQI plus. Point 10 is consent, point 11 is pornography, and point 12 is reproductive health care, i.e. abortion. Would you like me to zoom in?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Just the ones that I have marked in red were of most interest. I thought perhaps you'll find something else on the other points. Also, it's important to note at the end of point 8, the presentation of LGBT relationships without distinction as to their heterosexual counterparts. It already happens on the SPHE course in schools, so don't be thinking that this is all new material. This is already in schools. Point 10 is about consent, point 11 is about pornography, and point 12 is reproductive healthcare, i.e. abortion. Point 22 is very interesting. Point 22 from this Dáil committee, set up with recommendations, actually calls for stakeholders to have an interdepartmental approach to deal with children from 0 to 18. So they're mimicking what was in the WHO document, because that is their guidelines, that I've just read through with you. Let's see the list of stakeholders and the people who had personal invites and the groups who had personal invites to make submissions. Do they represent you? There are a few good submissions in it, but very few.
Is Elphin the only one the only diocese?
Elphin is the only diocese. I am an institute. I saw Patrick McChrystal from HLI. I'm not sure if there are any others that I recognise. As a result of all of this NCCA review on the bill, we've been bombarded on mainstream media, TV and radio with calls for classes on consent, LGBTQI plus classes as if they're not already happening, pornography literacy as if it's not already happening, abortion. There's even talk of sex inspectors checking on children's learning after RSE classes. That's a paedophile's perfect job. What is the problem with these issues being taught in schools? Consent. Consent can't be given without full knowledge, so what knowledge should be spoken about when we're talking about consent? Are there any ideals that should go with this? Liberals would say, no, that's too judgmental. Consent plus marriage. What is the problem with advocating for the ideal? In every other subject in school, we teach to an A grade. If I don't teach the A material, I'm going to be in bother. Why are we not advocating for marriage when we're talking about consent or any of these issues? I'm not lying to you when I say that it is not mentioned. It's not mentioned in any of this material. How about mentioning commitment or love or fidelity or monogamy? And if we're not mentioning them, why are we not? Why are we denying that consent on its own is the perfect recipe for somebody to feel abused, exploited, and used? Is it all right for your child to be taught that consent alone is enough? Is that okay? No. What about contraception? What's the problem with talking about contraception in schools? It is the belief of a large number of people that contraception is moral, and as such, the education around contraceptives should not be imposed upon children within a curriculum. Will the most effective and risk-free contraception, i.e. abstinence, be taught? The NCCA made it clear in that previous research paper that abstinence-based sex education is not worth the paper that it's written on. What about LGBTQI plus matters? I keep stumbling over all those letters and it gets longer and longer every time I look at it. The teaching of this material brings with it moral implications when all sexualities are taught as valid and morally equal choices, which is already taught at second level. It's against my beliefs and a whole range of perspectives that have existed for millennia. As for genders, I'm a science teacher. It's a biological fact that there are two genders, male and female. This is the belief of millions of people from many religions and from no religion. Where is the proof that these newly proposed genders are actually fact? And will this fact change from time to time? If a school is to teach something that is untrue, then it becomes a centre for indoctrination, not education. What about abortion? Obviously, speaking to children about abortion brings with it moral implications. Will all the facts be given, as I said earlier? It is the belief of at least hundreds of thousands of people in Ireland today that the ending of life in abortion is immoral. Will this fact be taken into account? What about pornography? And I apologise because this is quite unpalatable. We have a serious problem with pornography among our young people in Ireland, but those calling for pornography literacy classes in our schools are not the kind of people I want near my children. A pornography researcher based in NUI Galway, has had a platform on mainstream newspapers and on RTE calling for pornography literacy classes to allow our youth to develop critique skills around pornography, to allow for discussions on the positive aspects, and of course to reduce shame around the use of pornography. We'll talk more about Kate Dawson later. What about the moral, psychological or social problems caused by pornography? What about abuse, human trafficking? What about our souls? These proposals for curriculum content don't include discussions on responsibilities, morals, even ethics. How do families instill in their children their own value system if they're not the people having discussions with their children, and protecting them from discussions and information that they do not need to know? This is Kate Dawson, but I'm just going to quickly swipe over. Our schools today, what is actually happening in our schools without these proposals? What's happening in our schools? So, talking about national school, I mentioned earlier the paedophile childminder story in junior infants. I didn't make that up. The Stay Safe programme has a few topics that I have a problem with. Topic 3 in particular is about touches, and the rationale about having these classes is to give children the language to stop sexual abuse. They are taught explicitly about inappropriate touches. This is alien to my 5-year-old. Naming body parts, perhaps you think I'm prudish, perhaps someone thinks you're prudish, but I have a problem with my 5-year-old being taught female genitalia in a mixed class. Maybe you have that problem? Yes. It's happening in every single, do not think that it's not happening in your local school, because it is. They all have the Stay Safe programme. Secret touches, again, this concept is alien to my 5-year-old. Page 54 and 55 go through the story of an older boy inappropriately touching a young boy and asking for it to be kept a secret. I don't want my child to be introduced to this concept, and neither do I want that concept introduced to a peer of my child, so games can happen on the playground. I don't want that for my child. When the children get older, there's a Busy Bodies book that is given out. It's often given out to the children the day after the talk, even if the children have been kept out of the class. I have debated about whether or not to show you some of them, so I picked the 2 least offensive pictures out of this book that I could, but I just can't bring it to put it up. I just can't bring myself to put it up on the screen. The rest, I'm going to keep it brief. These are labelled cartoon pictures of the male body, female body, erection, ejaculation, and intercourse. I think this is too much, but maybe you think I'm prudish. Okay, what's happening in secondary schools? I already mentioned that a lot of these proposed topics for RSE are already being taught at secondary level. Consent, contraception, abortion, LGBTQI plus matters, and pornography. And the LGBTQI plus matters I've mentioned, it's presented that all sexualities are equally valid choices on the SPHE course content at the moment in schools. If you think it's not already in your local school, I can almost guarantee you are mistaken. What about external agents when the teachers don't want to teach these classes? In Connacht, we have AIDS West. They come into 40 of our local schools to deliver their programme. Their website, it looks relatively innocent, but their full programme outline that somebody sent me in the post because she received it accidentally, I think it was one of those God incidents, you know, like a coincidence, but it wasn't. Their full programme outline sent to principals, but not sent to parents, shows a different story. This is for junior cycle students, 13 to 15-year-olds. There are 3 sessions, 6 hours, huge disruption over 3 days, and a very costly business. Huge disruption to the school timetable, where you can see there, if you can read it, consent, pornography, sexting, Snapchat, smartphones, body image, and exploring gender, and that actually is relatively innocent, that list. The programme developer is Kate Dawson, the lady, the pornography researcher that I mentioned earlier. I just wanted to think for a moment about the innocent and chaste children that are in these classes through no fault of their own, that don't have a clue what is being spoken about. No mention of love, marriage, family, babies. No mention of relationships, care, respect, dignity. This is happening in 40 of our Connacht schools. A few of us have managed to work to get them out of some schools, but they probably just went somewhere else down the road to fill up their very busy timetable. And this group are in primary schools in County Galway as well, where the doctors come in to do the talks. They're not medical doctors, they're They are people who have studied sex in studies and have got PhDs in them, so they're called doctors. I'm just going to show you a 2-minute clip. Thank you, Tim.
As children return to school, a parents group in Galway have said families need to be aware about a sex education course that has been held in a large number of schools around the country. They say that consent forms sent to parents often do not include crucial information about what children will be exposed to.
Lots of parents didn't realise, and they were very shocked and distressed about what their child was taught in these classes, and they didn't realise the full extent of what was in that programme.
The parent was really angry that she had discovered the complete programme outline of Wiser that is taught as a sex education class in her secondary school where children attend. We had a look at the consent letter that she was given, and it was really information, very brief information about what was going to be happening or who was giving the class, but it was in stark contrast to what was in the programme.
The Wiser programme document that was sent to schools, but not to parents in at least one Galway school, is coordinated by pornography researcher Kate Dawson of AIDS West. She has previously discussed teaching children as young as 8 about masturbation and pornography.
She believes that topics such as masturbation and pornography should actually be taught in schools to pupils as young as 8 years of age, and that might be quite sensational because I'm taking that from a newspaper report, but basically that's what we do.
Yeah, really, so I thought that we normally would work with children at the other age, generally at the around 11 years old.
If parents knew that this lady was in schools, in primary schools and secondary schools, as a programme developer for sex education talk, I think they'd be utterly shocked.
As a parents group, we are concerned that these programmes in schools, particularly the Wiser programme, will lead to the early sexualisation of children.
AIDS West, who oversee the Wiser sex education programme, did not respond when asked if they share Ms. Dawson's views. They also did not respond to a request for a list of schools in which they operate.
Okay, so there's just a few pictures. I had started just going through the full programme outline. Nude images, sexting, pornography, social media, peer pressure, this is all mentioned. What else was mentioned here? The key sexual competency lessons or learning points that are mentioned here are consent, protection and pleasure. They're the 3 sexual competency learning points. No mention of love, marriage, family, babies, relationships, care, dignity, respect, none of this. This lady, Kate Dawson, she uses Twitter, and after one of the classes in which she had done a pornography alphabet up on a board, she tweeted the picture of all of these words, and I actually phoned John Lacken during the week, and I feel very uncomfortable even talking about it, which means that I definitely wasn't going to show the tweet. I don't want to be culpable for bringing inappropriate images or words to innocent ears, so I decided not to show it, but all of the information is on the Lumen Fide website. John Lacken has a document exposing all of this, and the tweet is there. Kate Dawson was forced to take it down because there were a lot of phone calls coming into NUI Galway to complain about what she'd been teaching the junior cycle students about pornography. Okay. This is the consent form. Okay. What is your job as a parent or perhaps a grandparent? So I'm talking about parents. It is not okay for all of this knowledge to be given to your children without your moral and ethical value system. And it's worse if someone gets there first and their values are impressed upon your child and values that you don't agree with. It is not okay for someone else to decide what age appropriate is when it comes to your children or to give them this information before you feel they are ready. It is your job to decide what is right for your child. These topics are proposed to be taught without ethics, morals, or your family values being delivered to them. No consequences, no responsibilities, no talk of God, religion, or your soul. No philosophy, no personal convictions, and no school ethos getting in the way. You are the expert when it comes to your child, not a teacher, a researcher, or a sex doctor. And don't let anybody tell you that these subjects are core subjects. It doesn't matter what label is put on them. They're not mandatory. There's nothing actually that is mandatory, really. Rely on your instincts. Why do we not allow our children access to material we deem inappropriate? Why do we even bother regulating TV and books? Because it's our instinct to protect them, and this is a good thing. You have a right and a duty to do this. Remove them from places of danger, build up trust with them, nurture good relationships, and they will come to you with problems and questions. Protect their innocence. During the last number of years, we have all become aware of how abuse robbed our children of innocence. Abusers were in all walks of life. We are all rightly angered about this, but now we have their innocence robbed at school in the guise of education. Is it all right for strangers to talk to your children about sex, even if your child doesn't want to? What about sex inspectors? Is enforcing a child to speak about sex abuse? Apologies for this next slide, it's really haphazard. Isn't my child's number writing, it's actually me. These are your rights as a parent. Number 1, Article 42 of the Constitution acknowledges parents as the primary natural educator and the rights of parents to provide, not just for an education, for the religious and moral education of their children. This is in our Constitution. The second point, as Catholics, canon law protects our right to choose schools that best promote the Catholic education of their children. We just need some Catholic schools first. Number three and 4, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the European Convention on Human Rights protect not only our right to have our children educated, but it commands that the state shall respect the right of parents to ensure such education and teaching is in conformity with their own religious and philosophical convictions. Where is Ruth Coppinger when you're making good points? Number 4, it's number 5 on here. There are many court precedents in Ireland which deal with educating a child against the parents' religious convictions. They're dealt with under kidnapping laws. And the last part is important to read, I think. The parent is the primary educator. They should be able to decide in a school according to ethos and then be able to trust that the school will always teach according to ethos, respecting the parents' beliefs and not submitting to political ideologies. The parents should decide what material is age appropriate and if it is appropriate at all. And they should instill their family values while discussing issues of moral gravity and consequence. What does the church have to say about this? The church has clear teaching of innocence. The Pontifical Council for the Family, Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality tells us that the years of innocence, which are from about 5 years up to puberty, is a period of tranquility and serenity which must never be disturbed by unnecessary information about sex. The WHO people mustn't have read this document. Instead, children should be given prudent information about chaste love in an indirect way in preparation for puberty when direct information will be necessary, and this should always be passed on with family values, ethics and morals in a truly holistic way and set in the context of God's loving plan for each of us. To conclude, irrespective of how you feel about any one of these issues, maybe you think I'm prudish, maybe someone else thinks you're prudish. Irrespective of how you feel about it, one fact remains: there is no consensus in Ireland on them. I'm in touch with liberal parents who voted for same-sex marriage and abortion, but they don't want somebody else talking to their children about this. There's no consensus on whether or not these topics should be taught in schools. Parents with different views may disagree in different topics, but a lot of them agree it's not a teacher's place to discuss these issues with their children. Schools cannot be the place to discuss these topics of huge moral and ethical consequences to schools in Ireland at the moment. If some parents want to abdicate their right and responsibility to teach their children about issues of moral gravity, it doesn't mean everyone else loses their right too. And the state cannot hijack this right to impose their own cultural agenda. What can you do? What can you do? Sorry, I just did this before the talk. You can start asking questions of your principals and your teachers. You can write a letter to the Board of Management or the Parents Association. It actually has to be read out as part of correspondence. You can write a letter to your TD or to the patron of your Catholic school, which is the bishop. I have templates of letters to TDs and letters to the Catholic bishops, and John Lacken has said that some of them are already online on the Lumen Fide website, but he'll put the rest up. Access more information on Lumen Fide. Fingalwitness.com is another website, or you can email any of these email addresses here for groups that are already involved in fighting this. Link with them on social media. Gript is an online platform run by the Life Institute, or Parents' Right is based in Donegal. Attend or organise your own local meetings. Start calling into radio stations and engage in debates and fight for your rights. We have a petition going on Change.org. A friend of mine started it, and today there are over 13,000 signatories. And she intends to have it presented to the Department of Education as part of this review. The title is Stop Explicit Sex Ed, so if anybody wants to sign it, you have to already. And lastly, but very importantly, please pray. There are two final remarks. The first one is, once known, this information can't be unknown. And that goes for children, but I'm sorry, it also goes for you. Now you know this is happening, you can't say that you didn't know. And the second thing is, in the future when someone asks you, gosh, when you found out about that, what did you do? What are you going to say? No slacking. Thank you for your attention.